Check, 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 check. Good morning. I apologize. We're running about 5 minutes late this morning. We'll get underway in about 5 minutes or so. Good morning, team planning. Good morning, team legal. Good morning, team heritage. Good morning, team communications. Good morning, colleagues.
Morning, Chair.
Good morning to the media. Morning to everyone who is joining us in the gallery. And a very special welcome this morning to Peter Radke. Good morning, Peter. We'll get going in about 3 minutes.
Nice filter, Tim.
I always wanted to be a dog. I thought it would be fun. Where were all these awesome avatars at the start of COVID? Like, seriously, come on. Oh, Fox. What did the fox say? Yeah, this is great.
Look at his fox.
Okay, we're professionals. We were elected by people.
All right, now I'm now a part of this meeting, and I'm sorry. Good morning, team clerks. Good morning, Kelly. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Planning and Housing Committee meeting number 18. I'd like to acknowledge that Ottawa is located on unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation, whose culture and presence have nurtured and continue to nurture this land. Il est important de souligner que la ville d'Ottawa se trouve sur un territoire non cédé de la nation algonquine Anishinaabe, dont la culture et la présence sont enrichis et continuent d'enrichir ces terres. May I get the roll call, please?
Councillor Brockington.
Here.
Councillor Curry.
Here.
Councillor Dudas.
Present.
Councillor Johnson. Councillor Kavanaugh.
Present.
Councillor Kelly.
Present.
Councillor Kitts.
Here.
Councillor Lowe.
Here.
Councillor Tierney.
Present.
Councillor Troster.
Here.
Vice Chair Gower.
Here.
Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. I know Councillor Johnson has sent her regrets this morning. This is a public meeting to consider the proposed comprehensive official plan and zoning bylaw amendments listed as 4.2, 4.4 through 4.8, 4.10, and 4.12 through 4.15 on today's agenda. For the items just mentioned, only those who make oral submissions today or written submissions before the amendments are adopted may appeal the matter to the Ontario Land Tribunal. In addition, the applicant may appeal the matter to the Ontario Land Tribunal if Council does not adopt an amendment within 90 days of receipt of the application for a zoning bylaw amendment and 120 days for an official plan amendment. To submit written comments on these amendments prior to their consideration by City Council on November 22nd, 2023, please email or call the committee or council coordinator. Are there any declarations of interest? Nope. Are the minutes of meeting 17 confirmed? Thank you. All right. Sorry, it'll take me a second to go through the agenda here to see what we can clear now. It is a lengthy one, but I'm not sure that we're going to have a lot on a lot of these items. The first item is the updated Community Lands Development Corporation name, mandate, policies, and procedures. We are getting a presentation on that, I think, today. Thank you, Peter. And we also have motions, so we're going to be holding that one. There is an item 4.2 on 300 Goulburn Forest Road. There are no presentation planned. We don't have any correspondence or no delegations signed up. Nick Sutherland from Arcadis and Marcel Denom are available on behalf of the applicants if anyone would like to ask some questions. Marcel and Nick, did you need to speak if the committee is prepared to carry this?
No, I'm all good, thanks.
Thank you. Do any members of the committee wish to hold this? Is that item carried? Thank you. Item 4.3 is an application for demolition and new construction at 110 York Street. Bear with me just a moment. We don't have any delegations. We weren't anticipating a presentation. Do any members wish to have this held? Any applicants? Oh, and this is also item 4.4, the zoning bylaw amendment. Vincent Denom, if the committee is prepared to carry these items, did you wish to speak? Nope, thank you. So are those items carried, 4.3 and 4.4? Thank you. Moving on to the zoning bylaw amendment for 253, 255, and 257 York Street, 78 and 80 Nelson Street. We don't have any correspondence or delegations. There are members of the applicant team who are prepared to speak to it if required. Do members wish to hold this item? Tamara or Lisa, do either of you need to speak if the committee is willing to carry this? Thank you. Is this item carried? Thank you. The zoning bylaw amendment for 68 Sweetland Avenue, as well as 146 through 168 Osgood Street. We don't have any correspondence or delegations. Vincent and team, if the committee is prepared to carry this, did you still wish to speak to it? Thank you. Is this item carried? Thank you. We have the item on 770 and 774 Bronson Avenue, as well as 557 Cambridge Street South. We're expecting a presentation. We have a delegation on that as well as the applicants, so we'll hold that item. The official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment for 384 Arlington Avenue in beautiful Somerset Ward. There are members of the applicant team who are prepared to speak to it. We've received some correspondence. Did you wish to have this one held? Yep, we're going to hold this one. Items 4.9 and 4.10 are associated with 283, 285 McLeod. There is an application under the Heritage Act, as well as an official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment. There is no correspondence, nor do we have any public delegations who have asked to speak. Would you want to have this one held? Okay. Members of the applicant team, John Stewart and team, Brian Casagrande and team, if the committee is prepared to carry this, did you still wish to speak to the item? Thank you. Sorry, that was a no. Thank you. Is that item carried? Items? Thank you.
Sorry, I just came on. I have no reason to comment. Thank you.
Thanks, John. And items 4.11 and items 4.12 are associated. There's an application to alter 359 Kent, as well as 436, 444 McLaren, in addition to an official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment. We don't have any public delegations on this item. We did receive some correspondence. I know the applicant teams are here to speak to it as well. Did you wish to have this one held? We're going to hold this one. There is a zoning bylaw amendment number 413 for 5957, 5969 Fernbrank Road in vibrant Stittsville. We don't have any correspondence or public delegations. There are members of the applicant team here. If the committee's prepared to carry this, Greg or Robert, do you still wish to speak?
We have no comments, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Robert.
Thank
Is that item carried? Thank you. There is an item at 3040 and 3044 Innes Road, zoning bylaw amendment in exciting Ottawa West Innes. We don't have a presentation, there's no correspondence, no delegations. Are you looking to have that one held, Catherine? No. Ryan, if the committee is prepared to carry this one, do you still wish to speak? Thank you. Is that item carried? Carried. Thank you very much. There is a zoning bylaw amendment at 970 and 974 Silver Street, as well as 1271, 1275 Shillington in just across the border from a beautiful River Ward. There are no public delegations signed up. Oh, I'm sorry. There are public delegations signed up to speak to this one. So we're going to hold that item. There are 3 public delegations for that one. There is the item Ontario Land Tribunal settlement at 1047 Richmond Road. There is a public delegation on that. We will hold the item. Is that the one that's coming up? Yep. And so there is a motion to add an item under new business. I'm proposing we deal with it now.
So I think we do need to waive the rules.
So to waive the, it's yes.
Whereas the report was approved by council on July 12, 2023, with a recommendation for the city to enter into a front-ending agreement with Mattamy Monarch Limited for the design and construction of the roundabout at Longfields Drive and Kilspindie Ridge to an upset limit of $4,484,376.46 plus applicable taxes and indexing. And whereas the financial implication of the report erroneously stated that the capital accounts will be established with budget authorities of the upset limits 100% funded by development charges, and whereas the intended financial implication was meant to instead state the capital accounts will be established with budget authorities of the upset limits 95% funded by development charges and 5% by tax. Therefore, be it resolved that the report be revised so that any mention of 100% development charges funded be replaced with 95% funded by development charges and 5% by tax.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair. Are the rules waived to add that to the agenda as new business? Yes, and just because I know there are probably staff who are waiting on that one. Did anyone wish to speak to this item? Is the item carried? Thank you. Okay. This is like the most substantive chair's notes document I've seen yet. So the very first item, the Ottawa Community Lands Development Corporation name, mandate, policies, and procedures. So OCLDC is changing its name. Build Ottawa, don't. You stole their thunder. And I know we also, I believe, have motions on this one. There's a motion on this one as well, so good morning.
Thank you, Chair Leeper. Before we get started, I just want to take a second to introduce our chair of the corporation, Pamela Sweet, to my right. She's serving in her second term on the board of soon to be named Build Ottawa, and her second term as chair. So she's here to support. And to my right, Mr. Nirmal will be doing the presentation, and really it's his team that does a lot of the heavy lifting for the corporation. So I'll turn it over to him.
Thank you, Peter. And thank you, Chair. Good morning, folks. I have 4 slides that I'll be using to explain the current Ottawa Community Lands Development Corporation mandate and the proposed changes in order to bring them into conform in line with Council's direction. The current mandate of the OCLDC reflects the core business, which is to unlock the value in the City of Ottawa's real estate portfolio through strategic development. The focus is on achieving optimal value, quote unquote, for the city. The term optimal embraces both financial and non-financial community value. Since its inception in 2007, the objectives of the corporation has been to undertake strategic developments of city assets. This has included planning, subdividing, or redeveloping parcels of land for a variety of uses. Under the current mandate, the OCLDC has been successful in supporting the development of over 2,000 residential units through the sale of surplus lands, with 25% of those being affordable units. The corporation has also produced over $100 million in gross revenues for the City of Ottawa, directed over $6 million of that to the city's Affordable Housing Fund. Next slide, please. So fast forward to 2022-23, we have a new city council for which housing affordability is its #1 priority. The 2022 council governance report provided direction to OCLDC staff to revise the corporation's mandate and revise its policies to meet the new council priority. OCLDC staff, its board of directors, and legal counsel have all been working on the amendments to the mandate, objectives, and policies to shift focus on identifying and preparing city-owned lands for the development of affordable housing or generating revenue for the development of affordable housing from the disposal of non-residential city-owned lands. Part of this exercise has also included a rebranding of the OCLDC name to Build Ottawa, which I'm sure, Chair, will be a relief for many, as few seem to get the full name or the abbreviation right. The OCLDC will continue to promote and undertake real estate development that results in community improvements and fulfills the highest priority needs of the city and its residents, including affordability. However, the core focus of the corporation will be to advance the development of affordable housing units in consultation with the city's housing branch, especially affordable rental homes with a mix of unit types and sizes, catering to a diverse range of incomes, including deeply affordable homes. The OCLDC will also support the participation of nonprofit organizations in this initiative and encourage their participation in the market offering process. This may be accomplished by requiring purchasers of city land to partner with nonprofit housing providers or include affordable units as part of any proposed development. Next slide, please. The existing OCLDC policies are based on a best practices analysis that was completed from surveying other jurisdictions and municipalities. Staff has reviewed the existing OCLDC disposal policy and procedures in the context of the amended mandate, and the following changes are necessary to facilitate the development of affordable housing. Firstly, to amend the general section of the policy to require that all surplus lands be evaluated for their suitability to accommodate residential development, and to provide an option to dispose of real property at less than market value or an alternative financing model if the parcel is developed for affordable housing. And secondly, to amend the achieving optimal value section of the policy to specify that although the monetary value of offers will be reviewed in relation to the market value of the real property, market value will not be the sole determinant in establishing optimal value. And to require that the level of affordable housing be examined in determining optimal value. Next slide, please. In order to effect these changes, Chair, the letters patent, which addresses other items like the minimum and maximum number of directors, will need to be amended through filing of articles of amendment with the province. Upon approval of the staff report by Council, OCLDC Legal Counsel will start the process of filing the necessary paperwork. That concludes our presentation of the changes proposed to the OCLDC. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. It's a quick presentation, but I know how much work went into getting us to this point, and thank you very much to the entire team for doing that. I know the new mandate for Build Ottawa is something that is close to the mayor's heart and certainly close to ours as well. there are no public delegations, so we'll move right to Councillor Troster.
Thank you so much, Chair, and thank you so much to all of you. The issue of affordable housing, land disposal, how we maximize our assets is really, really close to my heart. I just have a question. Have there been instances where a higher bid has been rejected in service of the have there been instances where a higher bid has been rejected because there is another bid that proposed to do more in terms of community benefit with a piece of city land? I'm just curious a bit about your decision-making when it comes to selling that land.
So without getting specific, because when bids come in, they have to remain confidential, but there was one property, it might have been in the last term of council, I think, where we had multiple bids in, and the highest bid was not the use that the board wanted on the property. And so the successful bidder actually did bid less, but the use was more aligned with what the city was looking for.
That's great to hear. And I have another question. You know, obviously the land downtown is very, very valuable. So if the city owns a piece of land that's considered very lucrative, is it your preference to develop it as affordable housing or to sell it to get the funds to build elsewhere?
With the changes that we're proposing, affordable housing will be a very important lens in any decision going forward. So I think that is front and center for us now, is looking to try and incorporate affordable housing into any projects that we're pushing forward.
That's great, because you'll hear me talk a lot at this committee about how the goal of intensification can often lead to displacement in our neighborhoods, and the land is so valuable, but we don't want to empty the core of the diversity that we value and the people who have lived there for a really long time. So I worked on a motion with staff, which I'm pleased to put forward. And those of you on the committee, you'll recognize the language is very similar to something we just passed in regard to the Lansdowne project that Councillor Johnson put forward. So it's about community benefits. So I can introduce the motion now. Whereas the community benefits agreement is an agreement typically involving developers of infrastructure and building projects, municipal or other governments in community coalitions intended to achieve a broad range of socio-economic outcomes from infrastructure and building projects. Whereas community benefits agreements are typically founded on a shared legally binding commitment between government, the private sector, for example, developers and contractors, and communities to commit to socio-economic outcomes from construction and infrastructure projects through an effective, efficient, transparent, fair, and inclusive process. Whereas there are approximately 400 CBAs implemented or under negotiation in North America. Whereas comparable programs to Build Ottawa, like Housing Now in the City of Toronto, have included the development of community benefits agreements as a condition of disposal of property. Whereas potential community benefits may include, but not be limited to, equitable hiring practices, funding for training, public realm enhancements, and greater accessibility. And whereas Build Ottawa is mandated to seek optimal value to the city's taxpayers, which is to be seen as pertaining to both community and economic benefits. And whereas community benefits agreements have also been negotiated as part of major development applications in Ottawa, such as Manor Park Estates and Heron Gate agreements. And whereas recent provincial legislation, including Bill 23 and Bill 109, has significantly reduced the amount that developers are required to contribute in terms of community benefit through the elimination of Section 37 and the introduction of community benefits charges. Okay, finally there. Therefore, be it resolved that Build Ottawa be directed to incorporate potential community benefits, including but not limited to equitable hiring practices, funding for training, public realm enhancements, and greater accessibility when developing evaluation criteria for the disposal of surplus lands. So I put this forward because land is the most valuable thing we own as a city. And as I mentioned before, it's really incumbent on us to make sure that we get the maximum benefit for all of the communities that live in Ottawa. And we have a perfect example of where we benefited from something similar from the federal government. As you know, there's a large development being proposed at 1010 Somerset, adjacent to Plants Recreation Center in my ward, where the city got a significant discounts on the purchase of the land when we agreed to do all sorts of things, including expand recreation services and build affordable housing. So this is a roadmap. This is not a requirement. But it just offers some more direction to staff when it comes to disposing of land to consider some of these other elements to ensure that we're really maximizing the value and making sure we don't leave anyone behind. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Troster. Just before we move on, since this is on the table, can I just ask staff to make a quick comment? This seems quite worthwhile to incorporate into our decision making. Are staff supportive of this?
Yes, sir.
Fantastic. In that case, we'll move on to Councillor Brockington.
Thanks, Chair. Good morning to you, staff. My understanding was the main mandate of the corporation is to dispose of surplus lands that the city is deemed surplus, and the intent is to acquire the highest amount of money possible from that sale. You have described a situation where you chose, I guess, the second highest bid, but really my understanding is the mandate has historically been, once council has deemed land surplus to our needs, corporation's job is to get as high value for that property as possible. Is that more or less correct?
Chair, in the previous organization of the corporation, we actually followed 4 pillars. So finance was one of those pillars, but we also looked at, how it fit into the community, how it benefited the community. So we do have to generate X number of dollars, $5.5 million a year as part of the budget, but we're also charged to look at, how does it benefit the city? And we always brought the proposal to the board for final approval. So it wasn't staff making the decision, we'd make the recommendation.
Right. And how has the city used the proceeds of sale in the past? They go into general revenues?
Excuse me. So in the past, when the money is transferred to the city, 25% goes into the housing fund, the remaining goes into the surplus lands account, which I believe is typically used for capital funding.
Fair enough. Okay. And at the beginning, I believe I heard to date, we've acquired about 100 million from the sale of property, and 6 million has gone towards, is it housing or affordable housing?
It's towards the affordable housing fund.
Okay, so a small fraction. So going forward, we expect this percentage to go up. Is that correct?
Yes, the complete story is the 6 million is only from residentially zoned properties. So the affordable housing fund instructs which properties, the revenues from which properties go towards that fund.
Fair
so
enough.
It's only residentially zoned properties. So even though the 100 million represented total OCLDC sales, which included non-residential properties. So
Okay, that's important to clarify. Thank
exactly.
you.
But going forward, yes, more monies will be going towards the affordable housing fund.
Excellent. The slide you put up that you stressed, I saw you look up for dramatic pause. You said that future sales will not necessarily accept the top offer for the lands. And can you just expand on that? Like, how are you going to make that decision-making process? You already have 4 pillars that your board assesses. So how do we modify this going forward?
So we'll be using evaluation criteria, and we always bring for each piece of property, we bring that criteria before the board for their approval. And so when the affordable housing lens is applied, and we will have the housing director who will now be in all our meetings to provide input from an affordable housing perspective. If we think we have a piece of property that is really well suited for affordable housing, then the evaluation criteria may be weighted such that, providing affordable housing will be the highest marks, whereas financial might be the second or third highest.
Okay, excellent. My last point is shorter name is better than the long name, because I have worked with this corporation for a number of years, and saying the name publicly over and over again definitely has been butchered. How did the name, how did you decide on this name? What type of outreach or testing did you do to make sure this correctly captures the full mandate of what you're doing?
It was really an internal discussion among staff to brainstorm, and then had some input from the mayor's office also.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brockington. And just for the members' information, Kelly is distributing Councillor Troster's motion as we speak. Councillor Kavanaugh.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. I'm hoping Ottawa Community Housing will be a partner in this, since the city is the sole shareholder of Ottawa Community Housing. But if you were to sell off land, one of the things that concerns me right now is we don't have any rules in place to demand a percentage of affordable housing if it was sold off to a developer. Can that be incorporated? We say in our housing and homelessness plan of a minimum of 10%. What would we do to ensure that we have affordable housing?
Chair, so that is our intent going forward, is when we have evaluation criteria that we bring before our board for approval, we'll be requiring affordable housing in any future development. So we haven't brought any to market yet. So we'll be bringing one to market in 2024 that will require, I believe, 30% affordable housing content, and we'll see what the reaction is to the market.
Okay, so 30%. Okay, I think Toronto's pretty much doing the same thing. Is that correct?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Because they're really pushing hard on it. So I'm hoping we're following up on their model, because it's fairly, in a good way, aggressive to affordable housing, and we have opportunity. No, that was my concern. I appreciate the motion from Councillor Troster. I think that'll help. And I hope that OCH can continue to be a strong partner. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanaugh. Councillor Curry.
Yeah, so thank you. I just want to ask, and I'm sorry if this is in there somewhere. I've read so many things at the moment on affordable housing. Is there a possibility for this kind of, it seems to me this kind of an incentive to be stacked with other incentives?
Chair, I believe so. That's part of the intent, I believe, of the motion, is to require additional, have additional requirements for anybody that would be buying land from the corporation, whether it's public realm improvements or equitable hiring practices, that sort of thing.
Sorry, no. So what I'm saying is, so if we are going to potentially sell the land at a lower value if it's affordable housing, and we have an affordable housing CIP, and CMHC has other things, and the federal government, can these things all be stacked? And would that be a part of the consideration?
Well, the corporation is arm's length from the city. So I think some of the programs you mentioned are city oriented. So we're doing our own deal with the developer when we sell the land. So we have our own requirements there, but we can certainly work with staff to see what else we can stack in the agreement.
Well, that's what I'm wondering, if maybe somebody from city staff would answer my question. I understand what you're saying, Peter, that, you think that's good, but I wonder if staff would say no, because this is a different type of thing. It would disqualify them from being a part of the CIP for affordable housing.
If I could take that question. My understanding is they would be eligible for the affordable housing CIP, for instance, which I think is the councillor's query. So I can confirm that.
Okay. The other thing, so now moving to the motion by Councillor Troster. So this is asking just that when evaluation criteria be developed, that this, all of these things be incorporated. Can I get a comment from legal as to whether it's okay what this motion is indicating?
So you're going to get answers from two lawyers, and hopefully they're the same. I, of course, represent the city, and as Mr. Radke just pointed out, Build Ottawa is separate from the city, but I did review the motion and not have any problem with the language. Ms. Blanchard from BLG is Build Ottawa's independent legal counsel.
So we've had a chance to review the motion with staff, and our understanding of the direction in that motion is that depending on the property in question, the characteristics of the site, the anticipated development, some, but not all of those additional criteria might be built into the bid criteria. So I'm looking at that as sort of a menu directing the board to consider those additional types of community benefits when building criteria for each site. And so there's no reason why that can't be done. I think that's certainly a useful direction from council.
Okay, thank you for that, everyone.
I'm sorry, I just lost track. Councillor Curry, thank you very much. So I assume you're not waiting for another answer. Councillor Dudas.
Thank you very much, Chair. Okay, I have a series of questions. I want to understand this a little bit more. So it sounds like as if it's the board that will determine when an applicant comes forward, whether to forego the additional revenue because it's for the greater good of the community. And what is the tipping point between how much revenue we'd be willing to forego? And you might not be able to answer that right now. And you mentioned there's criteria, but if we're going to forego $20 million because there's a perceived good, how do you value perceived good versus the money?
Chair, I think that'll be done on a case-by-case basis when we bring properties before the board. So I don't think there'll be one answer for every piece of property. I think it'd be specific property to property.
Yes, because I'm also on the flip side cognizant of the fact that that money generated also went into affordable housing. So there's kind of that tipping point of, do you generate money for affordable housing or do you forego it for the built house? So I didn't really expect a full answer, but if you could keep that in mind. I also want to understand too, there's been situations where a piece of land is available, whether it's through OCDLC or just in general, and a developer doesn't have any interest in any affordable housing on that site. So if you only have one applicant, that applicant is a developer and they don't want to put any affordable housing, how do you work with that?
Chair, we would present it to the board and probably seek direction from the board if they want us to, redesign the evaluation criteria, go back out to market, maybe alter the listing price to try and generate some more activity there. So again, I think it'd be case by case, and ultimately we would be looking for the board for direction there.
So having sat on the board in the last term, one of the things that I would think of is that if you only have one applicant and they're willing to come to the table and you have no other perceived options, there might be an opportunity there to funnel more funding from that sale into affordable housing, because you don't want to forego that. You don't want that land to be just fallow, right? There's no point to that. We get nothing out of it. So I'm putting that out there. This is of concern to me. I also want to be very clear. So the return to the city, there is a prescribed return to the city in terms of revenue annually, I believe. Are we going to anticipate that that's going to be diminished? And once again, just to understand that, either in regards to the return to the city or also in terms of the funding that we put towards capital funding currently.
Chair, so that discussion actually came up when we presented this to our board, and Cyril Rogers sits as the treasurer for the board, and Wendy Stephenson is our CEO. And the discussion there was, we don't want to, right now we have a projection of $5.5 million per year in the budget. And so I think we're going to continue with that going into 2024 and then analyze at the end of 2024 to see how we did. So it is going to be a challenge when you start adding additional criteria that we need to produce as well as the financial end. So it'll be an analysis done at the end of next year to see how challenging that was.
Okay. And having sat on the board and now being part of planning and housing committee and as a counselor, there's a lot of balancing act in what we're proposing here. There could be a lot of good that's derived from this change, and there could be some negative in that we're foregoing revenue. Maybe we don't end up getting the affordable housing because developers. So is there a point where you will be coming back to us as a committee to tell us, we've looked at this, we've tried these things, we need to tweak it a bit, or we're such an amazing success and we've built a whole whack of affordable housing and we're generating revenue and everything's good? When is that touch point?
So we do an annual report every year that has to be received by the shareholder. And we actually were here, I think, in September with our 2022 annual report. So that most likely would be the best touch point.
Okay. And that continue. And I once again, that will continue every single year. This is a huge change for OCDLC/Build Ottawa. To me, it doesn't matter what the name is. I just want to make sure that if we're setting the goals for building more affordable housing, we're driving more community benefits, that there is an equal value in terms of revenue potentially lost, right? We need to see the value on both sides, or we need to see it significantly weighted in terms of the community benefits. And I just want to make sure we're aware of that going forward. So that's the end of my questions, Chair. Thank you for your indulgence. I'll pass it to the next person.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dudas. Councillor Kitts.
Thank you, Chair. Geographically speaking, I'm wondering, is there, do we have a concentration of potentially surplus land in certain transects, or is it spread out citywide?
We do have an inventory of surplus land, Councillor and Chair, and it is spread out throughout the city. So I wouldn't say there's specifically, more concentration in one area as opposed to another. We do have some areas where there's maybe a little more than others, and a few TOD areas. The original creation of the OCLDC going back to 2007 was actually done for to advance two strategic projects, one was the Longfields development project, which in the Barhaven community we had a significant amount of land holdings there, which have all been sold off. And we have Centrepoint Town Center, so there's significant land holdings that the city does have in that particular area. So that will go through this board at some point.
Okay, wonderful. Just looking at the sort of the Geo-Ottawa map of city-owned land, it does look like there is a lot in the suburbs, which I wanted to highlight because I think it's potentially very transformational for those areas where historically we've fallen behind in terms of a diversity of housing options. So just wanted to highlight, I think this is a really exciting opportunity. And also wanted to say kudos on the rebrand. I like the logo. I like the name. Certainly looked like it was time for a refresh. So congratulations.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kitts. Well said. Councillor Tierney.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I concur with Councillor Kitts. We're way too rich in acronyms at the city. So anything that's simple, I like. I did have a couple of quick questions. The first one is, and I'm only mentioning this because I'm trying to get the attention of the federal government. We have parcels of land, for example, like off Aerosmith on Jasmine, where we have some partners coming to the table. We disposed that land in hopes of senior Indigenous housing, low income, and we're waiting for rapid housing money. None of this stuff is kind of happening, so we're kind of stuck. I guess the real question is, when we dispose of lands, knowing that there's an opportunity for a partnership, is there any time constraints that we can tie to things, or how do we work? I know the city's frustrated too. We're trying to get access to the money that they keep talking about, but it's not coming our way. Is there anything we can do about that? This one's very troublesome for me. I've been working on this for several years and staff have done a great job.
So Chair, I think the councillor posed the same question to me during the annual report. So that would fall more into the housing services area in terms of trying to get that funding. I'll remind everyone that before the land hits the Land Development Corporation, we do circulate it in the city to all the departments. And if housing services puts up their hand to say, hey, we have a not-for-profit housing provider that can use this entire piece, then that land actually gets transferred to housing services and they dispose of it for $1 to that provider and have their own agreement, and the Land Development Corporation doesn't get involved. So that will continue. And I think the example the councillor used was exactly that process that we used.
And that's terrific. And that's good from that perspective. And I also, Councillor Dudas made some very good points about the concern on concentrating on certain areas. If there's an opportunity to be able to get, I'm just throwing numbers out there to make it simple, 20 units of deeply affordable housing versus if it's more federated and it's outside of that inner urban area, but there's another parcel of land that could generate 100 units. How are those determinations made? Because, you know, I'd rather see the additional 80 units, with all due respect to my council colleagues that want to preserve it downtown, just to be able to generate more housing.
So, Chair, I think that would be done through the evaluation criteria again, and it would be weighted accordingly.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and congratulations on the rebrand.
Thank you very much. Councillor Kavanaugh.
Thank you. I know this is supposed to be about the name, but it's obviously we want to, it's an opportunity to talk about objectives. I'm wondering about the 20 parcels of land that were identified back in 2018, primarily around transit stations, and how we're treating transit-oriented development and these parcels of land. We have some that we had to buy because of the fact that the railway was going through and we had to take over pieces of property. And some of them are brownfields, and that's the other question, is how that's integrated in. Obviously, there's overlap there of, you know, are we looking at that policy as well? But how are we treating transit-oriented development and these parcels of land?
So for those parcels on the list, Chair, that they're still tied up with the LRT project. So we haven't been engaged yet. Once those lands are released by the LRT contractors, we would then do that circulation I chatted about before. And if there wasn't a need internally for the city, then, I mean, I would consider all those lands strategic and being transferred to Build Ottawa for future disposal. And any lands that get transferred to the corporation go to the finance committee, reviews it, and then it goes to city council, and you can tie any conditions. Council can tie any conditions they want to the transfer. So if they want to see transit-oriented development on those properties, then they can tell the corporation, ensure that is done.
Okay, that's good to know. And a number of them are brownfields because of what they had on them previously. So I know we're still sorting that out. But that obviously would become some kind of negotiation condition, because we're selling land that needs to be cleaned up.
Yeah, I think that would tie into the negotiations and even into the evaluation criteria.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Curry.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I didn't really think I would come on here a second time, but I just want to say one thing about my former comment. So the reason I asked about this stacking possibility and generally our intel into what else is going on, what developers have as options, is that a couple of days ago, there was an announcement at about 180 Canada Avenue, federal announcement. I don't know if any of you are paying attention there, but this was a file that we looked at. I'm sure you guys will remember last term of council. So we approved that 180 Canada Ave, and it was a big apartment building going up near Canada Town Center. And then 2 days ago, so that's, you know, almost 2 years ago, we approved that. All good. They went ahead. They're building it right now. And then 2 days ago, there's an announcement by the federal government saying they're giving them millions of dollars to make sure there's affordable housing units in that building. And that's wonderful, right? Everybody in Canada is like, well, this is lovely. Wonderful. However, if that had been city land, which at some point it was, right? Remember that land around the Canada Town Center way before me was sold as city land. If we had sold that at a discount, right? To Councillor Dudas's point, if we had sold that at a discount, and then later on, you know, the developer is able to build it anyways, interest rates are low enough, and then the federal government comes in and gives an incentive, the city at the end of the day has lost that opportunity. And so when I'm asking about stacking and what else CMHC is offering, I'm wondering, I mean, I hear Peter saying we can talk to the city, you know, they can talk to each other, even though they're separate. But I just think we need to be very careful before we give a significant discount on our land. And that, I think, that happened the other day in Canada is a very good example. So I really just wanted to share that with everyone here, and certainly with staff, to get reassurances that all types of things will be taken into consideration when you think about lowering the price of land. Can I be assured that this won't just be a given because it's affordable housing?
Yeah, we should be able to incorporate certain conditions, and we always do a developers agreement that gets put on title to ensure that, you know, the person buying the land is going to deliver what they proposed. And I'm sure we can have safeguards in that agreement if they are seeking, you know, additional funds where they may be, you know, let's call it double dipping, that we're protected there.
Oh, wow. That, if you can do that, that would make me feel a lot better. Hopefully all of us make us all feel a lot better. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor Curry. Councillor Lowe?
Thank you. And as an example of one of those agreements, I'm my ward's beneficiary to one of the parks that's going up in Longfield's the Longfield subdivision. So this could be my misunderstanding of the mandate of the OCLDs, Build Ottawa. Build Ottawa. Acquiring land is also something we can do, right? Let's say there's a parcel that we're disposing of, or we're trying to, you know, sell it for affordable housing and to promote affordable housing. And there's a little corner that happens to be owned by a private developer or whoever. We have the mandate to purchase that land, assemble it or whatever, then package it and sell it as well, or?
So the mandate, we've always had that ability through the corporation, and we will continue to have that mandate. We would need to find funding for it to acquire, but we do have that ability to acquire, yes.
Okay, and I was unclear or I wasn't paying attention from one of my colleagues' questions. If we have a parcel of land that we're disposing of and there's just a bidder and there's nobody else who wants it, can we, and you know, and they, despite their, you know, they might have no interest in doing anything that promotes affordable housing, can we just maybe increase the share that we put into it, into affordable housing instead of something on site? If that makes sense.
Chair, so I think the question is, we would reallocate more funds that we receive. So yeah, that'd be up to the city to decide. So when the money's transferred, it's being transferred almost as a dividend to the city. And so the city's receiving that dividend and they can do whatever they want with that money at council direction.
Yeah. So, okay. So even if that's if they were the singular bid and they had no builder themselves or the purchaser themselves had no interest in affordable housing, the city can still do things on its end too. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lowe. Councillor Brockington?
Thank you, Chair. Just one follow-up. The council, at my request, amended the stages at which an offer or a sale goes through by incorporating input from the local councillor. The local councillor is now provided an opportunity to learn in confidence about an offer on the table. Can you just confirm that with the revised mandate that will still be respected? And how do you envision when your board is contemplating who to sell to, input from the local councillor would be undertaken?
So, Chair, I can confirm that is still part of our procedures, that the local ward council will be included in the meetings. And we do receive input, and the board then discusses that and how to incorporate it when we're selling a piece of property.
So if the local councillor has input, even objections, that would be at least considered by the board before a final decision is made.
Yes, and we've even received councillors have joined the meeting, even if they don't have a comment on the actual piece of property. They always provide a good perspective on what's happening in the surrounding area. So it's always been very productive.
Excellent. Thanks very much.
Thanks for confirming that, Councillor Brockington. Councillor Troster, I'm guessing you want to wrap up.
Yeah, I just want to wrap. Thank you so much. Thank you so much to staff. And I think these questions are really helpful because they get to the core of the challenge. There's going to be tons of situations where selling the land for the most amount of money and then using 25% to build affordable housing that's already in the pipeline is the best solution. And I also think there'll be other scenarios like in Centertown where a piece of land might be very valuable, but we've seen a lot of displacement of lower income folks from that neighborhood. So it's actually more beneficial to build affordable housing there. So I really appreciate the support from folks at the table here. The intention is not to be directive. It's just to add some more considerations to the mix. And I really do appreciate hearing that the ward councillor will be involved, because I know in my ward, there's a diminishing amount of land. There's a lot of new developments and not nearly enough of it is affordable. So, but you know, we had that same conversation at Lansdowne. Do you mandate a certain percentage of units, or do you take the cash and put it elsewhere? So I think that's a really productive conversation. And I'm just really happy that we'll be able to have that every time there's land that's going to be disposed. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Troster. I don't see any further questions for staff or comments. So I'll ask committee if the Troster motion is carried. Thank you. And is the report carried?
Carried.
Thank you very much. Build Ottawa. We're going to give them an opportunity to sit down while I move to item 4.7, which is the Bronson Cambridge application. Right, so I think we're anticipating a presentation on this one, Aaron. We'll receive a presentation. The applicant team is here who will have an opportunity to present for 5 minutes. We have one public delegation, and then we'll move into discussion and debate. Aaron, run your hands whenever you're ready.
Good morning, committee and chair. We're going to talk about 700 and 774 Bronson Avenue and 557 Cambridge Street today. Next slide, please. Just to orient the committee, this is an irregularly shaped parcel. It's at the corner of Carling and Bronson and has an extension that wraps around to Cambridge Street, which is a local street to the west. There's 2 existing zones that exist on the property right now. There's been several proposals over the past years that have included zoning amendments. On the north side of Carling Avenue, there's an 8-story existing office building and a 16-story residential building that's under construction right now. On the east side of Bronson is Glebe Collegiate, and the Dow's Lake neighborhood is to the south and the west. So the proposal we have before us today, it's a 22-story mixed-use building. There's 278 units total in a 22-story building and a 9-story building. There's also a commercial component proposed on the corner of Carling and Bronson. Next slide, please. So just a chart outlining some of the major provisions in terms of what's existing in the zoning and what is proposed before you today. The existing zoning is arterial Main Street, and that's proposed to be remained, but we are proposing some changes to the height limits on the site, some setbacks, some parking requirements. And really, we're taking the 2 exceptions and height limits that exist based on previous proposals and combining on the site for one. Next slide, please. This is just an example. So on the left of the screen is the previous zoning proposal, or the zoning that is in place right now based on a previous 12-story proposal. And on the right is the zoning schedule proposed as part of this application. So as you can see, it includes that parcel, wraps around to Bronson and Carling. And some of the major differences, again, are the previous building approved here was a 12-story building that had a 4-story portion that came right up to Cambridge Street. The building before you today, it's higher, but it has greater setbacks, and especially on Cambridge Street, that 4-story portion of the building's been pulled back significantly. Next slide, please. So this is a schedule from our official plan, and you can see the star shows the location at Bronson and Carling. Why we're okay with the changes before us today. High rises are permitted on this strip of Carling Avenue up to 40 stories, subject to height transition, setbacks, and angular plane considerations, all of which we've looked at through this application. This improves on the previous proposal's relationship with Cambridge Street. It provides 278 units. 50 of the units as part of this proposal are 3 bedrooms or more, so large units. There's improvements along the right-of-way along Carling and Bronson. Right now, you might be familiar with Bronson Avenue has a very small sidewalk along that street right now. It's, I think, 1.2 meters or so. So as part of this development, we're receiving a road widening portion, and the pedestrian realm along that section of Bronson will be about 6 meters with increased landscaping, 6 proposed street trees, a series of benches, a bus shelter. So really improving on that pedestrian relationship. There have been changes over the course of the application, numerous changes along the way, but one of them is separation distance between an adjacent building to the west. So we've increased that, and that considers future development. So we have looked at the potential for adjacent development in that parcel to the west. terms of access and transportation, loading and service only will be accessed off of Cambridge Street, and it will be a residential exit only. The primary access for entrance and exit will be off Bronson Avenue. And for parking changes, there are some slight reductions proposed to parking on the site. This site's in proximity to a future transit corridor along Carling Avenue. There's multiple amenities close by. This application scores one of our highest in terms of community amenities at 9. A number of transportation demand management measures will be incorporated through the site plan, things to encourage people to take transit on this particular site. And we also are incorporating or upping the bike ratio or the bike parking provided as part of the zoning amendment application here to encourage that as well. Next slide, please. This is just a draft of the or one of the versions of the site plans. We're still working with the applicant through on the details associated with the site plan, but those are things about landscaping, confirming the access and loading, and some exterior materials. Next slide, please. And finally, in summary, this is consistent with our policy direction in the official plan for high rises. It's compatible with the neighborhood with minimal impacts, and we are providing 278 housing units on a vacant site currently. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. So we'll have an opportunity to come back to you in a moment with questions, but Paul Black, Tanya Chaweri, Robert Campos, and Andrew Hart are here on behalf of the applicant. And I'd invite you to come up and you'll have 5 minutes to make a presentation to the committee. And whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Morning, my name is Paul Black. I'm an associate at Foten Planning Design, joined this morning by Roberto Campos from Figure Architects and Tanya Chowri of KTS Properties, the owner of the site. We're happy to be before you this morning to discuss the proposal for 774 Bronson, 557 Cambridge. Next slide, please. So as you heard from Ms. O'Connell, the proposed development consists of 2 buildings, a 22-story tower at the corner of Bronson and Carling, with a 4-story podium, and a 9-story building on the piece stretching towards Cambridge Street, with a 4-story transition down into the neighborhood. As was mentioned, there's 278 total residential units in a 672 square meter tower footprint, which I think you'll appreciate is quite small compared to a lot of towers we see, and that's a function of the site and trying to achieve different benefits to the surrounding area. There are 221 bike parking spaces serving the development and 133 vehicular parking spaces within the underground garage. Next slide, please. This project has undergone a significant engagement with the community and with the local ward councillor since before the applications were submitted back in 2020. Consultation with the Glebe Community Association, the Dow's Lake Residents Association, as well as the Glebe Annex Community Association. And as a result, the project has evolved through that process to, I think, as you'll hear from the other delegation, I think to represent something that the community is very happy with. We also visited the Urban Design Review Panel on 2 occasions, and we've been able to, and we had a community meeting in September of 2021, and we are able to resolve most concerns as mentioned through this process. Next slide, please. Significant changes have been made to the proposal since it was originally submitted in 2021. Some of those have been highlighted already. I think the most significant ones are a reduction in the tower height from 26 to 22 stories, increased setbacks and step backs for all portions of the building, specifically along Cambridge Street South, where there was a lot of concern from the community with the original proposal. I think we've been able to come to a compromise that's much more agreeable to the community, pulling back not only the building above grade, but also the parking garage, which creates space for significant trees that will be able to grow with soil volume to reach maturity. So that setback has been increased from 3 meters to up to 9 meters in the proposal before you. We were also able to accommodate street trees along Bronson Avenue to create that better pedestrian environment along the street and add retail uses at grade, which was a request of Councilor Menard and the community to activate the street. We are also able to separate the 2 phases of the development between the tall high-rise building and the mid-rise building along Cambridge Street South, which creates more open space and better pedestrian connectivity through the site. Next slide, please. We did hear additional concerns regarding traffic cut through and shadowing on the Glebe Collegiate field specifically. Those were addressed in Ms. O'Connell's report. And we have mitigated those through design changes and through site plan control. Further mitigation, specifically of the traffic, will be made through signage and site design elements that will direct traffic north along Cambridge, away from the neighborhood and onto Carling Avenue. Next slide, please. That concludes our presentation. We're here and we're happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Black. Do any members of the committee have any questions for the applicants? I don't see any. Thank you for the presentation. We do have one public delegation today, Mr. Duncan Alt. Good morning, Duncan. Whenever you're ready, you'll have 5 minutes to make a presentation to the committee.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I won't take 5 minutes. I simply want to say that I am a member of the Dow's Lake Residents Association. We worked closely with the developer and with FOTEN, and the compromises that have been outlined today certainly satisfy a lot of the concerns of the community, particularly that transition between the community along Cambridge and the building there, the setback and the allowing for trees to reach maturity and the orientation of the podium. So this has been a wonderful experience from the community's perspective. We'd like to thank Councillor Menard for all of his hard work and effective work, and to thank the developer as well. We look forward to working with the developer through the construction period. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Duncan.
Duncan, I just have a quick question for you, if it's okay, and just want to say thank you as well for all your work, because I know you worked very hard with the community members to make this a better application. So often we're here and it's you know, kind of a battle sometimes, but this is a nice outcome. And I guess what were some examples from the process that can be perhaps used in the future for other applications that come forward that may not have as good an outcome as this one? What in your view was it that did it? Was it the time to consult? Was it the listening back and forth? Was it the community discussions that were held previously? What was it, do you think, that really helped bring this together with having a developer that was willing to listen and accommodate, and a community that was also wanting to give input in a productive fashion? I mean, what was it, do you think, that helped get us to this point?
Certainly a first-rate counselor helps. And we appreciated your guidance all the way through. A few things. One, we were able to organize ourselves early. And I imagine, as in our case, a lot of these things are like herding cats. Everybody has different specific outcomes in mind, but we were able to identify the broader objectives that matter to us the most. We retained a lawyer by the name of Christy Ross, who was very helpful, and she was able to be that single contact point between the community association and the developer and the councilor's office, and the multiple meetings, including site visits that we had both as a community association with the city with Steve Gauthier, and then certainly with yourself, and then with our lawyer, and to be able to take those concerns to the councillor were very big. So I would say go in early as an association, identify the broad concerns, and be practical on what you'll be able to achieve. My goodness gracious, have a single or at least minimal points of contact to be able to facilitate that communication. And again, it was great to have a developer who was willing to make those compromises. I don't think it was easy for them to increase that setback along Cambridge. I don't think it was easy to reduce the parking, to create the space for mature trees to grow. And certainly we really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for that answer. And thanks to staff as well, who I know worked hand in hand to get this to a better outcome as well. So appreciate all you and your community's work on this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Menard. Didn't set that up at all. Councillor Curry.
Thanks. I just wanted to ask, and I don't know if the delegation will have the first date, but I'm just wondering how long this project has taken from start for when the application first went in until now where it's at planning committee. If we have an estimation of how long it has taken to get this to planning committee.
I think, Duncan, I'll ask staff to handle that one because they'll be familiar with some of the pre-application phases. Thanks.
Sure. Thank you, Councillor. The application was originally submitted in August 2021.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Gower, Vice Chair Gower. Yeah, we'll go with questions for staff, please. Vice Chair Gower.
I'm not a question to staff, but a suggestion. It's good to see the transportation demand management measures that are being considered for site plan. The report mentions a 6-month Presto card. So if that was an adult monthly pass, it'd be a value of just over $750. And I would encourage staff and the applicant to look at doing a preloaded Presto pass rather than limiting it to 6 months. I think there could be more value. For example, if there's a student moving into these apartments who already has access to a U-Pass, having a 6-month pass won't be a benefit, but having $750 preloaded to do 200 rides when they're able to use it might be more value. So if it's the same cost and no change to the arrangement, I think it's beneficial to look at preloaded rather than monthly.
Appreciate that, Councillor.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Councillor Menard.
Thanks very much, Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to I guess go into a bit more detail about some of the positives here. Bronson at Carling is a really tough intersection. It's not hospitable at all. If anyone's driven there, walked there, you can't really, biking there is difficult. So the setback here on Bronson will be very appreciated. It is going to be a 22-story building. The setback from Cambridge as well is going to allow for more of a park space to take hold there. And the internalization of waste management, the separation of the buildings to increase the open space at the site. These are things that came about because staff work with the community and my office too. I want to thank Miles and John in my office who worked really hard on this application, and then just to the developer as well, just for coming to us. I think it's important. Councillor Curry asked about the timeline here. Previous, this site was zoned, I think, 2 times before this for development. There was development proposals that had come forward. I think 12 stories previously. So this has been through a lot of iterations. I think what we're getting here is a good amount of density in the core that'll benefit everybody. And even though the application was first submitted in 2021, we had held consultations beforehand and we're ready to go on this earlier. So appreciate the applicant bringing this forward and their commitment to things like traffic calming and care for the community in park space. So that's very helpful. And I just wanted to thank everyone involved in getting to a good outcome, which could have been a much more lightning rod of a file, but it was handled very well. And hopefully we see more of these at committee. And of course, Chair, we've been approving so many units at this committee. You guys have been really just approving a ton of units through here. And these are the type of units that add back to the city. So thanks very much.
Thank you very much. I don't know if Vice Chair Gower is going to do the math again today, but it's a significant number. Councillor Kitts.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just really quickly, I just wanted to say bravo to all involved. I think it's very encouraging to have a delegation come and speak in favor, not always typical at this committee. And certainly, you know, a huge team effort by all. But I wanted to highlight it because I think when the developer is willing to work with the community, willing to make those concessions, and when the community and council are willing to be productive in terms of the outcome they want to see, I think it's better for all. So just great work to staff and to everyone involved.
Well said, Councillor Kitts. Thank you very much. I don't see any further questions. Is this item carried? Thank you very much. I'm going to move on to Arlington. So item 4.8 is the official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment for 384 Arlington. Oh, this was, I hadn't anticipated the presentation, but yep. So Councillor Trostert asked that this one be held. There's no delegation signed up, so I'll just turn it over to you, and I'm guessing you have some questions to staff. Oh, and I just want to say thank you very much, Aaron, for your work on that other file. And the applicants are here as well if you want to pose any questions to them.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. So I'll just start by saying this file's been a little bit challenging. This is, I personally don't have a problem with height so close to the highway, but it is a major change for the neighborhood, specifically for Arlington Street. Once again, we come to some of the traffic issues. It is technically walking distance to a future LRT station, but 850 meters, it's almost a kilometer. So I understand that overall we're working toward parking reductions, which we support, and I'm supportive of reductions on parking minimums. But the challenge I'm having is that we're adding what is ultimately luxury housing to the area, and we're not substantially investing in either the active transportation infrastructure in the area or public transportation. And we need people to be able to get to and from the area. I'm just wondering if staff could clarify what you anticipate the schedule and the holding symbols being here, and any work that you might have done, any conversations you may have had with the development team about transportation concerns in the area.
Thank you for the question. So staff take neighborhood concerns as they relate to traffic and neighborhood safety very seriously. So on this application, staff required a transportation impact assessment, which was prepared in accordance with our guidelines and was reviewed to our satisfaction for the purposes of the official plan and zoning bylaw amendment application. A more detailed TIA will be provided at the time of site plan control, where items such as traffic calming and transportation demand management measures will be discussed and identified in more detailed and if required based on the results of that study. To speak to the context of this pocket of the Dalhousie community, although it's, as you mentioned, a little bit of a walking distance from the nearest LRT station, this pocket of the neighborhood is bounded by 3 transit priority corridors, where over time there will be investment to improve transit. It's a highly walkable neighborhood, and based on the walkability, the nearby cycling infrastructure, and then the transit priority corridors along Gladstone Street and Bronson, staff do see it as an appropriate location for increased density and height.
And I live just a couple of blocks away, so I agree it's a highly walkable, bikeable neighborhood. But I know we're not a transportation committee, but I do need to remind folks that Gladstone is still classified both as a truck route and as a cycling route, and there's no protection for cyclists there. So as all of you know, we did have a motion that I was able to pass at Transportation Committee and Council to advance the feasibility study for a complete street and for cycling lanes on Gladstone. And as we continue to intensify in that neighborhood, I just want to stress that it's going to be super, super important. The folks living in that building, if you're on a bicycle, there is no way to avoid Gladstone because it's either the highway to get off your street or Gladstone. And they're right near Gladstone and Bronson, which is a very, very dangerous intersection. So I remain very concerned about that. The only comment I want to say is, like, I'm glad to see the Heritage Building incorporated. I'm glad to see churches redeveloping their land into housing, although I am disappointed to see that there's no affordable housing component in this development, where a lot of other churches are making the decision to include an affordable housing component. one more piece, have you spoken to the developer about the possibility of offering Presto cards to tenants or any other transit-related incentive?
I would be hesitant to speak to what the applicant plans to do in that regard, as they still need to submit a more detailed TIA at the site plan control application where they would identify TDM measures and other traffic calming measures in the area. I will say that there was some indication that there may be monthly transit passes for tenants, but that was just a comment that we had received during the zoning and OPA process. And that's, to staff's knowledge, the information we have on that matter.
Okay, I just want to speak briefly to the context of where this building is going to go and the neighborhood around it. You might know the former Bell Towers, which is now the Live building. At the time, before it was redeveloped and renovated into the Live building, which is now a very expensive rental housing building. It's considered quite nice, but it's very pricey. It was one of the more affordable towers in the neighborhood. And when that building was purchased and renovated, one of the impacts is that families left the neighborhood because those apartments were no longer affordable. And the population at Cambridge Street Public School, which is across the street, was completely drained. Like it totally changed the nature of the neighborhood. So I just want to acknowledge that that is a dynamic, that this is a pocket in the neighborhood with a high level of poverty, with a high number of rooming houses. And this is going to be comparatively more expensive housing, which in and of itself is not necessarily a bad thing, but it just shows how important it is to get the balance right. I am very happy to see, though, that we have Ottawa Community Housing building up at Rochester Heights, very close by, and then also at Gladstone Lands. But again, it's this issue of intensification leading to displacement, because this is a challenging corner of the neighborhood. So, and I also just want to thank the development team. We did have a community meeting when it came to this. There was some hard feelings there. I understand. I think we need to recognize that these projects go better when we work with the community, that we end up with a product more people are happy with. Not everybody's going to be happy. And that's certainly in my ward. We're asking a lot of people in terms of accepting height in areas where we may not have seen it before on smaller streets as we build up the LRT and we consider what is considered transit-oriented development. So I just also want to acknowledge that I have no particular opposition to this project. But there were some hard feelings at community meeting, and I think it's understandable when we see our neighborhoods changing and we're not sure who they're changing for. But I do want to applaud the city staff and the development team for working so hard with our heritage team to preserve the facade of the church. I think it's going to be a pretty cool looking development. And I'm happy to see the high percentage of bicycle parking, the lower percentage of car parking. I just think, once again, we really need to do something to fix Gladstone, because it's going to be an ongoing concern. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Troster. So I don't see any other questions. So for the item 384 Arlington Avenue, is that carried? Carried, thank you very much. Moving on to 280, what am I moving on to? 359 Kent, 436 and 444 McLaren. There is the Heritage and OPA and zoning bylaw amendment. So we don't have any public delegations on this one. I know Councillor Troster had asked that it be held. Councillor Troster, did you want a full presentation on this one?
Thank you. Okay.
And we're not going to need a presentation today. And there is a technical motion from Vice Chair Gower.
Okay, technical amendment, whereas the Built Heritage Committee meeting scheduled for December 12th, 2023, and the City Council meeting scheduled for December 19th, 2023 were canceled. And whereas the application to alter 359 Kent Street, 436 and 444 McLaren Street, properties designated under Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act as part of the Centretown Heritage Conservation District Report, and the official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment 359 Kent, 436 and 444 McLaren report now list incorrect committee and council dates on the respective cover pages and must be updated to reflect accurate dates. Therefore, be it resolved, the City Council date for the reports be changed to January 24th, 2024 on the report cover page, and be it further resolved regarding the report that the office of the City Clerk be directed to update the Built Heritage Committee date on the cover page to add the January Built Heritage Committee date once it is finalized.
Excellent. And sorry, I should just note as well that the applicants are here as well. Taggart, Hoban, and Associated Consultants. John Stewart is here as well. Gentlemen, if the committee is prepared to carry this, did you need to speak to make a presentation? Thank you. So, Councillor Troster, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. We have a lot of files for my ward today, so thank you for indulging me. So I believe this might be the first landmark building policy application that we've seen at Planning and Housing Committee this term. So I'm just wondering, and it won't be the last, I'm just wondering if staff could give us some details on what the standards are within this policy. So my understanding is this is a policy that only exists within heritage districts, correct?
No, so just to clarify, so the landmark policies exist within the former Centertown secondary plan, the current secondary plan, so not strictly related to just a heritage conservation district.
Okay, so what standards do developers have to meet within the landmark policy? Because it is pretty unique.
I'll admit I was counting on the presentation being in front of me. So, just in answer to that question, so in order to be considered a landmark building, you have to be on a site designated for a landmark building, and within this secondary plan. So this site is located on a secondary, on an identified landmark building site. The maximum height can be no higher than 27 stories. It does have to contribute a significant public or institutional use or community use. It does have to have no net impact on public open space from a shadowing perspective. And so also, frontage on 3 streets, and then provision of a community benefit. So in this case, we'd be doing that through the community benefits charge bylaw. Also retention of significant heritage resources if those exist. Sustainable design and energy efficiency, and special design review.
That's great. And could you clarify what civic use is meant to mean within the context of the policy?
So in the context of the policy, civic use can be, anything that contributes significantly to the community itself, so that immediate community. So when we were reviewing this application and based on the application and the details that were submitted by the applicant, in this case, we're looking at uses such as community center, community health and resource center, daycare, museum, etc. So it is quite limited because we do want it to contribute in a meaningful way.
That's great. And I do want to acknowledge that the applicant has been really open to working with us and figuring out the best community use. They've offered to dedicate at least one of the heritage buildings to some sort of community use. We've also had conversations about potentially using a room in the podium on the main floor for some sort of community use. I don't want to negotiate, we haven't 100% figured it out, but I do want to recognize that we've had some really, really good conversations. Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to say this building policy is unique to the city, and this is very new for Kent Street. We are going to see towers on Kent Street, both here and then also the Burgill development near the bus station. But once again, this is a big change for the community, and there are a lot of heritage concerns. So I know that the developer came in initially asking to try to bump it up to 34. I'm just wondering if staff could explain why you insisted on sticking to the 27 floors that's in the policy.
Yes, absolutely. So as per the landmark building policies, the maximum height that is permitted is 27 stories, as we've discussed. And this stems back to the Centertown CDP and secondary plan process that was done from 2010 to 2013. And through that, there was a detailed analysis performed on the heights that would be acceptable and appropriate for the Centertown neighborhood. And also an acknowledgement of the NCC height control plane. So it was identified that 27 stories is that appropriate height to maintain that visual integrity to the Parliament buildings. And so that is why, for a landmark building, it is very strictly set at 27 stories. Now, of course, when an application, even for a landmark building building comes in, we do have to review that proposed height. And so for this proposed development, we did feel that the 27 stories was appropriate when we did that analysis and considered the analysis that was undertaken by the applicant.
Chair, if I could just quickly add to that, I think it's also important to highlight that the landmark policies really only apply to the portions in Centertown that are otherwise designated low rise and mid rise. Whereas if you look at the whole downtown core between the highway and Parliament, there's pockets at the north end and the south end that already permit high rise where these policies don't apply. So it's truly meant to do something special to warrant going above those mid-rise or low-rise designations. And that up to 27 is to ensure that we're not seeing taller buildings in the middle of Centertown, which is otherwise a different context than what we're seeing on those bookend heights.
Once again, similar to when I was mentioning with the Arlington development and Gladstone Street, this one is right on Kent, which is like a highway through our downtown. I'm desperate to turn that into a complete street too. It is wide enough for bike lanes. So, and I also do want to acknowledge that the developers have been quite willing to talk. Unfortunately, the way that our new community benefits charges work means that we can't ask for an additional voluntary contribution to help build that bike lane because there are a number of towers going in there and quite a lot of people that are going to need to get around. So again, I'm just flagging this. Expect to see conversations about this transportation committee and with the second part of the transportation master plan, because again, I really feel that this is an artery. It's an arterial, but it's a highly residential street where we're adding hundreds of new homes. So I think that will be really crucial. And again, I just want to say, much like with the application we just saw in Councillor Menard's ward, this was an example where community input, I think, really made the development a lot better. Again, there's still some tension. It's not easy. You know, just as city staff had to say, this is not a place where we typically see height like this, and we're getting quite a lot of it in the next few years. So I also want to acknowledge the Centertown Community Association's planning committee for really engaging in this process, and also heritage staff. I think we've come to a good place in terms of the push and pull that happens with the development community. I want to thank the development team. And this will be quite a number of years before we see shovels in the ground. So I hope we can continue to have conversations about public realm throughout the site plan process. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Troster. I don't see any further questions on this item. Is the technical motion carried? And the two reports?
Carried.
Very much. We're going to move on to, thank you very much for staff's work on that. I'm going to move on to what? The suspense is killing me. There is a zoning bylaw amendment proposed for 970 and 974 Silver Street, 1271 and 1275 Shillington Avenue. We do have a few public delegations on this, and I'm going to ask staff to take us through a presentation on this one before we move on to the applicants. What the applicants are here.
I updated it. Caitlin resubmitted it. Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm in your hands to present to the Committee on Silver whenever you're ready.
Great. So we have a zoning bylaw amendment for 970, 974 Silver Street and 1271, 1275 Shillington Avenue. Next slide, please. The subject lands are identified with the red star. To the west is Maryvale Road, and to the north side of the image is the Westgate Shopping Center. Fisher Avenue runs runs north-south along the right-hand side of the image. And you can also see the experimental farmlands are to the east and south of the property. Closer in on the site, the red outline identifies the location of the proposed low-rise residential development on the northwest corner of Shillington Avenue and Silver Street. Alexander Park is to the west, and Alexander Community Center is to the north. So looking at the OP, Schedule B2 of the OP identifies the lands as neighborhood evolving overlay, shown with the small blue star there. Oh, sorry, next slide. Oh, sorry, yep, there we go. I'll note that supportive OP policies include Section 4.6, sensitive integration of new development into existing neighborhoods. 5.2, neighborhoods located in the inner urban area and within a short walking distance of corridors shall accommodate residential growth to meet the growth management framework. 5.61 notes that properties subject to the evolving neighborhood overlay, which are near hubs and corridors, include shallow front yards, principal entrances at grade with direct relationship to the public realm, minimum of 2 functional stories, And there's also section 6.31, development in the neighborhood designation will include a full range of low-rise housing options in order for these areas to gradually evolve towards 15-minute neighborhoods. Now, if you could go to the last slide, actually, I don't know why I kind of tucked it in the back there. But this is a concept of the massing for the site, and the planning recommendation is that committee approve an amendment to zoning bylaw 2008-2050 for 970 and 974 Silver Street and 1271 and 1275 Shillington Avenue from R3A zone to R4Y and L1 to permit a 4-story low-rise residential building. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll have the opportunity to come back to you for questions from members in a few minutes. Jennifer Martins, I think, is here. Did you want to take advantage of 5 minutes to make a presentation to the committee? Yeah, let me just see if any of the members have any questions for you. I don't see any hands up. Thank you very much for being here today. So we'll move into public delegations. Mark Dabrowski, followed by Chris Kushnerik, and then Jared Taylor. Are all three online? So Mark, we're just going to get you in here, and as soon as we're ready, we'll offer you 5 minutes to make a presentation to the committee. Good morning, Mark. We see you.
Good morning. Good morning, Councillors.
Whenever you're ready.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you for taking time or the opportunity, giving me the opportunity to speak with you today regarding this this proposal here. Next slide here. So as you saw in the previous slide, the area that we're talking about is here on the corner of Silver and Shillington. It's surrounded by Alexander Community Center and Alexander Park in blue, and then in yellow we've got the 4 houses that would be torn down and replaced with the 4-story low-rise. So I believe that there's a great opportunity here to do something very beneficial to the community and potentially a win-win for all parties involved. So if we go to the next slide. So from the street view, you can see here we're on the corner of Silver and Shillington. So in the background, I highlighted where the Alexander Community Center is. It's kind of hidden behind that tree. And then we see 3 of the 4 houses there. So with the proposal, if it goes forward, these houses and trees would all be demolished, clear cut, and then the 4-story building would go in the spot. Where we see the red car is where the current driveway or entrance into the underground parking, I believe it is going to go. So one thing to note here is that currently there's a lot of families and children that use Silver Street as a way to access the community center, as well as a walkway to get to the local elementary schools, either Gowling or the St. Elizabeth Catholic School. So there is a lot of foot traffic on Silver Street, and there's no sidewalk here at the moment. I know there's ones in the plans with the building. The other thing to note, on the left-hand side where the red tree is where the actual entrance is to the Alexander Park. And you can see there's no crosswalk there. So there's lots of times that families or kids or people just cross Shillington rather than using the crosswalk to get to that park. And so we're talking across cars. So next slide, please. So here I just highlighted where that proposal is, where the building is. So my idea that I think if we take a step back and look at the bigger picture, what we could do is potentially do a land swap. So if you click on the next slide. If we were to take land from the west side of Alexander Park and give that to the builder, to the developer to use, and then shift the soccer field to be facing north-south, then where those 4 buildings would have been demolished could turn into a playground and be part of Alexander Park. This would then allow for the 4-story low-rise to have its driveway be on Shillington rather than off of Silver. And then the little sliver in the back could be potentially amended to the proposal to the applicants for either courtyard or extend the building to add more units, or offset the building to add more parking, visitor parking potentially. And then where the playground currently is, I just have that highlighted. That could either be play structures. I know there's minimal play structures there at the moment, potentially tennis courts or pickleball courts or a gazebo with picnic tables. There's lots of possibilities there. So if we click on the next slide. So now if we reimagine those four houses being torn down and replaced with potentially a playground, the trees potentially could all stay as is. They wouldn't need to be replaced. And then we've got children and families and using this as their main entrance to the park and to the community center. Yeah, so that was my proposal, and just want to throw that idea out there to the committee.
Thank you very much, Mark. Just checking to see if there are any questions for you from members, and I don't see any, so thank you very much for the presentation today. Chris Kushneriak, I apologize for the pronunciation of that, is not seen online, so what we'll do is we'll go to Jared Taylor, and if in the meantime Chris comes back, then we can come back to him. Good morning, Jared. We see you, and I'm going to guess we can hear you.
Good morning.
Good morning. We're in your hands. You have 5 minutes to make a presentation to the committee.
Well, thank you very much. Good morning, Chair and committee members. Thank you for allowing me to speak today in support of the zoning amendment in front of you to permit a 4-story low-rise residential building. My name is Jared Taylor, and I've lived in Carleton for 6 years. I'm speaking today representing only myself, but I hope that I can speak from a community perspective and highlight how this development can be part of improving that community. I believe that this is a very reasonable amendment and will allow exactly the type of development that the city should be encouraging. This is a purpose-built rental building with a variety of unit sizes and balance of one bed plus den, and 2-bedroom apartments. I currently live in a 1-bedroom apartment on Coldry Avenue in Carleton as well, and this development is exactly the kind of building I would love to have as an option to move to. When I look at the current market in Ottawa, I see a dearth of options for people in my situation who do not want to own a home, but would like to have a little bit more space. So first, I would like to start by outlining several of the plan features I consider beneficial to not only the future residents, but the community at large. To start, there is no surface level parking included in this plan. The plan currently calls for 23 parking spaces for 50 residential units, a ratio of less than 1.5 or 0.5, and only 4 more spaces than what is required as a parking minimum. This is in contrast to the 45 bicycle parking spaces with 12 exteriorly located and 33 secured spaces for residents in the underground parking. To me, this shows the prioritization of active transportation and acknowledges the development's proximity to active routes. It is my hope that with this development and similar future builds, the city will put more resources towards upgrading cycling infrastructure in the area. Shillington is a primary link between Maryville and Fisher and offers great connectivity to the experimental farm pathways. It links residents of Carleton with downtown businesses and employment options. Looking at the surrounding area, there are a number of nearby built or planned developments that the proposed building is in character with. The immediate area includes a number of low-rise apartment buildings along Shillington and on surrounding streets such as Hollington, Somerville, and Silver. This includes a 4-story development of approximately 30 units, which is going to be located at Silver and Somerville, and that is currently going through a site plan phase. The building in today's proposal will only serve to complement those buildings as another option in a fantastic rental community. This development as well will be close to a pharmacy, grocery store, schools, the Carleton Community Health Center, and a number of professional services that will allow future residents to live and work within the community. This development does represent change, and some in the community may see that change as scary, but I believe it is positive and encouraging. I want to have options that only density will justify. For example, our Alexander Community Center needs to be renovated and expanded. With this development abutting that center, it will only serve to increase the use and need for that expansion. We also need better access to library services, and from what I have seen, the city will only put resources towards these kind of initiatives once an area has the population to support and demand it. From a private perspective, I've seen a number of local businesses come and go in the time that I have lived here. One thing the city can directly control to support these businesses is help provide them with a dense population that makes them sustainable. The one point I would mention that I think can be improved in this development is tree retention, and that was underscored during a community information session when this project was originally proposed. The developer at the time did seem very open to working with the community to mitigate these concerns, and I do believe in this case, as they have already worked to redesign the location of the parking garage entrance, which was a direct result of feedback from that info session that I mentioned. Nevertheless, I do not think that this concern is great enough for it to be a reason to deny future tenants a place to live. I do also want to acknowledge that I think it is unfortunate a development like this even needs to go through the zoning amendment process. This development should be an easy yes for this committee based on the city's own policies to encourage infill. Forcing a 4-story development through this process will only serve to increase the time to build and the costs along with that. Those costs will always be passed along to the eventual tenants of the building. If the city were instead to allow 4 stories by right in an interurban area such as this, we could speed up development and reduce those expenses. It's the direction many cities in Canada are taking, and I would like to think that Ottawa can be at least as progressive as Mississauga. The federal government has also signaled that this is important through their Housing Accelerator Fund approvals and memos that they have sent to cities regarding that. So in closing, I would just like to say that I love living in Carleton, and I think that more people should be allowed to call it home. This development will be a net positive for this area and the city at large. So please approve this amendment and allow me to have more neighbors. Thank you for your time today.
Jared, thank you very much. I see that Councillor Brockington has a question for you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Jared, for your presentation this morning. Very much appreciated. Can you just confirm for my colleagues who may not know that the area as well as you and I do, that there is a very diverse dwelling type in the immediate community? There's just talk about the mixture of houses and buildings that already exist at this corner.
Sure. Across the street, there are a number of townhomes. Down Shillington, there are a number of townhomes, as well as mixed low-rise residential, as well as you kind of proceed south into that more of the Carleton neighborhood between there and the experimental farm. Again, you see a mix of those townhomes, single-family homes, and low-rise residential. I think most of the low-rise there right now is 3-story, but don't quote me on that.
Excellent, thanks. Yeah, just across the street, we have a low-rise apartment, just similar to what is being proposed to be built here. So great housing diversity, and thanks very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Jared. Seeing no more questions from committee members, thanks for your presentation today.
Have a good day.
And we'll move to questions. Oh, Chris is on the call. Okay, we have one more delegation. Chris Kushneriak.
Hi there. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, welcome, Chris.
Sorry, my video isn't working, unfortunately. I'm trying to get it to go, but it won't. But regardless, yeah, so I'm a community member. I've lived here for the last 7 years. I've lived on 4 different streets in the area. So I lived on Kingston Avenue. I built a house on LaPerriere Avenue. I lived on Mayview Avenue after that. And I live on Dorchester Avenue now. So I've had an opportunity, in recent history to get a real feel for the neighborhood and just kind of the demographic and everything that's going on here. And I felt compelled because I know this site very well. I would drive by it every day. And for me, I'm strongly in favor of this development just because not only do we need more density here in Carleton, it's just that the houses that are being replaced have just been historically super problematic for police and local residents. The previous tenants used this pretty much as a trap house. There were trailers parked in front with tarps over them, shopping carts everywhere, people coming in and out, creating disturbances left and right. And I didn't live on Shillington, but everyone in the neighborhood seemed to know these houses. Regardless of that, though, to me, it's it wouldn't only help clean up this corner, but it's going to provide an aesthetically pleasing building, an additional, I think it's how many units is it? Is it 6? Did I see 60? Regardless, it's exactly what Carleton needs. We need to attract young professionals. We need to attract families. We need to essentially do a lot because there are other developments coming in that are proposing some risk to the neighborhood. I know that there's the Shepherds of Good Hope. They're proposing, densifying that, and already just with opening it up as it is, it's creating a ton of issues at that intersection, and a lot. Basically, it's posed a safety risk for a lot of people on Maryvale Road. I just would like to see that these types of housing developments, that the city looks at them favorably, not only for the tax base, the development fees, everything that these developers are risking to try and solve our problem of housing and adding more units. I just think it's a slam dunk, and I absolutely love to see it. And I thank the developer for choosing Carleton because I think that the neighborhood geographically has a ton to offer, and the neighborhoods everywhere I've lived is the people are awesome. So I thank the developer, and I hope the city council and the planning committee looks at this favorably, because I think it's fantastic.
Chris, thank you very much. I don't see any questions from members. So are there any questions of staff by members? Councillor Brockington.
Thank you, Chair. I do want to just follow up on one matter that Mr. Taylor raised, and even the first delegate, and a written submission from the Community Association, who Carlington Community Association is on the record in support. But the issue that they raised as well was about tree retention, some of the trees on these 4 properties. And can staff just inform the committee to what length we are pursuing tree retention, and then for trees that have to come down, the plan for tree replacement? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. With this one, there was a couple pieces to the properties that caused some of the trees to need to be removed due to some of them being central to the 4 properties that exist. So with those trees, and then there were a number of trees that were identified that were straddling the property boundary between this site and Alexander Park as well, which were identified as poor quality invasive species trees that were entangled with the fence through that site as well. So looking at the site as what trees needed to be removed for the development, we looked at where the trees could go, new trees could go on the site. So we're looking at larger tree species along the northern side of the property next to the Alexander Community Center. We're looking at how we can retain trees along the street frontage where they may come in interference with the future sidewalk. But one of the other items that we talked about with the applicant is a tree replacement with trees that would be taken from the site and replaced either on Alexander Park or in other neighborhood parks.
Excellent. Very good. Thank you. And I think we spoke about potentially Raven Park, so that's good to see. There's nothing to debate here. I support this proposal. And I'll just note that the Community Association's letter of support mentioned they would even have supported a larger, taller proposal for this site. So even though that's not what's being proposed, there is a pretty strong agreement in the community that we would like to see something at this corner, that yes, there are 4 houses being lost, but it's being replaced by many more units. And we'd like to see this happen. It is a good fit when you compare it against the low-rise apartments that exist in the immediate community. This blends right in. So I'll be happy to see this move forward. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brockington. Councillor Lowe has a comment or question?
Yeah, so normally when we get public delegations that come out to speak against a development, they usually just say no, or they'll, I won't comment. So the land swap proposal, and I'm not trying to speak on behalf of the ward councillor here. I'm not trying to suggest anything. The land proposal is actually a swap proposal is actually quite interesting. Is that something that we ever consider, and maybe not specific to this development, but in general, is that something we ever can consider for developments?
Through your chair, thanks for that question. That comment, I believe, came to us initially through the public consultation, and it is something that we did look at. In this instance, the depth of the park would have made this property quite narrow in its development, and it would have also interfered with the size of the playing fields in the park. So we did bring it to the parks group to discuss what kind of options there would be for land swap in this case. And it was from that parks perspective that it didn't seem like it would really work for them, and so we didn't pursue it any further.
Okay, no, thank you. It seems to fit with, like, if his community association supportive of taller, closer to Maryville is actually, I think, even more ideal. But not my community, and I don't want to impose anything on anyone. So thanks for the comment.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lowe. I don't see any other questions or comments. Councillor Kitts, did you want to ask for a voice vote on this one? Is this item carried? Carried. Thank you very much. Making my way on through here. So the next item is item 416, the Ontario Land Tribunal Settlement, 1047 Richmond Road. We haven't talked much about exactly what the process is going to be here. Good morning. And I'm going to ask Mr. Mark maybe to, we have to formally add it to the agenda. Councillor Gower.
Yeah, whereas the report titled Ontario Land Tribunal Settlement 1047 Richmond Road, Règlement du Tribunal Ontarien d'Aménagement du Territoire, was not originally listed on the agenda and was subsequently published with the revised agenda on Friday, November 10th, 2023. Therefore, be it resolved that the Planning and Housing Committee approve this item to be formally added to the agenda pursuant to subsection 89.3 of the procedure bylaw, being bylaw 2022-410, to allow for the consideration at this meeting.
Is adding it to the agenda carried? Thank you. So this is not a development application. We're going to be discussing a potential legal settlement for a matter that is currently before the tribunal. It's not my intention to give the other party, the applicant, an opportunity to address, except for maybe a brief comment in a little bit. But what I would ask first is that Mr. Mark give us an overview of what it is that we're being asked to consider today. There is a public delegation on the matter, and then we'll proceed into debate. So, Mr. Mark, why are we here?
Mr. Chair, there's a hearing scheduled for the week of December the 4th with respect to this application. This was refused. Well, an application was refused by committee and council earlier. And the reason I changed from this to an is that what is proposed has substantially changed from what was before council at the time of the refusal. It's gone through several iterations. One was recently received in October. It has substantively changed, and Ms. Hamlin and Ms. Stern, who I believe has a presentation, can speak to the planning characteristics of this better than I, but it has so significantly changed that staff have come back to you seeking that committee and council endorse the proposal. The applicant has also, aside from the pure planning merits of what they proposed, has agreed to 15 affordable units for 15 years in each tower. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Hamlin and Ms. Stern.
Chair, I'm before you today, but Lisa is online, and Lisa will give a short presentation, and then we can take any questions.
Thank you. I have a very quick presentation about the process that this went through, as well as the revised proposal. So just to give a little bit of context, this is the site location. It's at 1047 Richmond Road. It's located right at the corner of Richmond Road and New Orchard. And it is directly across from the future New Orchard LRT station, currently under construction, which is in the Byron linear path shown in purple. Next slide, please. Just a little bit of timeline of the application. So the applicant submitted an official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment in February 2022. This was for a 3-tower proposal with 36, 38, and 40-story towers on top of a 6-story podium. There was 1,343 residential units and 1,300 square meters of commercial space. In April of 2022, staff provided comment to the applicant based on technical review, as well as review by the Urban Design Review Panel. And there was no further action by the applicant. And then in July of 2022, the applicant appealed the application for non-decision by council to the Ontario Land Tribunal. Subsequently, and in light of the appeal, the department wrote a recommendation to Planning Committee and Council in November 2022, recommending a refusal of the 3-tower approach. On both occasions, Planning Committee and Council agreed with the recommendation of staff and refused those applications. In October of 2023, and after several iterations which staff did not support, the applicant provided a proposal which staff has found to be appropriate development for the site, considering official plan policy and direction of urban design guidelines. The revised proposal consists of 2 towers of 38 and 40 stories atop low-rise podiums. There's 1,006 units and 1,200 square meters of commercial space and 1,012 square meter park right at the corner of New Orchard and Richmond Road. Next slide, please. This is the original proposal. Again, the 3 towers atop a 6-story podium. It had a floor space index, which is a measure of density of 8.4 based on gross site area. Based on this proposal, again, staff made recommendation to Planning Committee and Council that the proposed development did not comply with the intent of the compatibility and design policies of the official plan, nor did the proposal satisfy the vision of the Sherburne New Orchard secondary plan with respect to increased density, setbacks, and impacts to the public realm. Next slide, please. This is the revised proposal. As I said previously, it consists of 2 towers of 38 and 40 stories atop a low-rise podium. Has 1,000 units, 1,200 square meters of commercial space. The proposal has a floor space index. Again, that's the measure of density of 5.45 based on gross site area. Park is provided at the corner of Richmond and New Orchard, as well as a 200 square meter publicly accessible private open space between the 2 towers. It's a little summary of the proposed changes between the 2 proposals. Removal of one of the 3 towers, which results in 2 towers of 38 and 40 stories. The 40-story tower is closest to the New Orchard LRT station. Reduction in tower floor plate from approximately 800 meters squared to 750 meters squared. Reduction in podium height from 6 stories to 3 stories. Increase in setback to Richmond Road from 1.5 meters to 5 meters. Increase in setback to New Orchard Street from 3.2 meters to 5 meters. The provision of publicly accessible private open space fronting Richmond Road, and the elimination of direct vehicular access to Richmond Road. The revised design represents a significant improvement upon the original submission. The elimination of 1 tower and lowering the podiums has greatly reduced shadowing impacts on the public realm and surrounding properties. The increased setbacks proposed to Richmond Road and New Orchard Street now ensure that significant tree planting can be provided along roadway frontages in alignment with the Green Street policies of the secondary plan. With the exception of tower heights, the proposal maintains the design expectations of the secondary plan and urban design guidelines for high-rise buildings. Whereas the secondary plan permits heights up to 20 stories on the site through a density through redistribution of permitted density, the applicant has proposed to increase density slightly and increase height, requiring amendment to the secondary plan. The site is located adjacent to the New Orchard LRT station. The official plan and secondary plan prioritize tallest buildings and highest densities on sites closest to rapid transit. The surrounding roadways, Byron Linear Park, and transit infrastructure provide a visual and physical barrier between the proposed development and the residential neighborhood to the south. Given the site's location in this unique secondary planning area and physical context, staff are in the opinion that the proposed increase in height is appropriate at this location. It's the recommendation that Planning Committee recommend council endorse a position before the Ontario Land Tribunal to support the amendment of the official plan and zoning bylaw in respect of 1047 Richmond Road. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before we move to the public delegation, I'll just ask Tim a couple of quick questions. So this is not a development application. This built form, which we're contemplating currently, is a settlement, if I may put it that way, that if we were to adopt the tribunal hearing would not move forward.
No, Mr. Chair, the tribunal hearing would move forward. The process that we've gone through, which puts us as a settlement in front of committee and council, is not, as you said, a development application. Therefore, we haven't done the requisite notice in order to adopt a zoning bylaw and official plan amendment that would normally be required of the city. So we would, which day of the week, I don't know, but sometime between December the 4th and December the 8th, there would be an appearance. Ms. Stern would give brief planning evidence, and if council endorses the settlement, and the tribunal would likely approve the necessary language for the zoning bylaw and official plan amendments.
If we don't endorse this built form, then what is the path forward?
The parties have been engaged in discussion, Mr. Chair, since late summer. With as Mr. Stern identified, there were iterations that were provided, and it was only in October that finally something was arrived at that staff could support. And the reason I give that background is that normally witness statements and other relevant documentation would be exchanged well in advance of where we are today, with only some 3 weeks left until the hearing. I think if council doesn't endorse it, I would have to request an adjournment of a hearing, and the other side either might consent or oppose. But then we'd be having a hearing later on, and given that staff support this settlement, I would have to retain an outside planner in order to seek to oppose it if that is the position that council takes.
Okay. Thank you. I may have some more questions for you after the public delegation, but we do have a public delegation, Mr. Ian McCallum. He's online. Mr. McCallum, are you?
Oh, I was muted. Am I connected now?
Hi, Mr. McCallum.
There we go. Look at that.
We can hear and see you. We're in your hands. You have 5 minutes to address the committee when you're prepared.
It's a pleasure to be able to speak to council and be beamed into that room. Having lost too much time sitting in the cheap seats in the back for half my life. I completely understand the predicament that this file has created. It's truly unfortunate that the pressure of the pending tribunal meeting in December forces us into a position where a bad option is put forward and should be accepted because the consequences of the worst version is looming overhead. And, Roosevelt said, sunlight is the best disinfectant. This is a settlement created by lawyers with planners and closed rooms with no reflection or input from the community. The file that has been presented to this committee is thin. It does not represent the depth of a file that normally would be before within an application process. I've had the misfortune or good fortune of following this bouncing file for over 34 months, and of course was on a tribunal call with council almost a year ago. So our community has been focused on this file for some time. It represents the first challenge to the Cleary New Orchard secondary plan, now known as the Sherburne New Orchard secondary plan. And it's an important test of that document. And unfortunately, the height gets blown up again. And it really feels we're in an analogous situation to where Richmond Road was with some years ago with former councillor Sean Little, who really took it on the noggin for allowing so much development along Richmond Road in West Wellington near Island Park. And we're almost in that situation now. In my submission, I included an annotated map of the secondary study updated to reflect all the development that's already occurred to date and reflecting the fact that the secondary study worked. And it's truly tragic that the first major development outside of all the pre-approved projects that went into the secondary study, those being the Azure numbers 2 and 4, that we now have this massive development. It's the developer purchased this property with the secondary study in place with the height densities in it. And the previous owner never improved his lands. The land's grossly inflated because of the quality of the neighborhood around it and the LRT station, and that became the sale price of Ferncroft. Everything's on a mega escalator, and it's truly unfortunate that this type of development is now going ahead. Our community supported the building of the secondary study. You know, those volunteers don't get those hours back. The whole underpinning of the height density for the remaining properties, which are almost all controlled by one family, are now in jeopardy of course being doubled because this project doubled. I got to listen to the previous development at Bronson and Carling. Community loves it. Community was involved. We have never had a real discussion with Ferncroft around this development. This is the exact opposite of those communities. That Carling and Bronson project has a tower square footage of 272 meters square. That's a third of these tower things. If you go through the various iterations and changes that is reflected in this project, you will see, if you compare it to the original staff report, which included the urban design review panel, you will almost be able to checklist through that entire process where the changes are done. There's a 6% change in the tower area.
You are out of time.
6%. Sure. Yeah, so I get it, this project's going ahead. Our community is under great stress with the growth of with LRT coming in. We need help. This type of project doesn't help us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. McCallum. And I see Councillor Kavanaugh has a question for you.
Thank you very much, Ian, for coming out. And I realize this has been incredibly short notice for my colleagues. Just so they know, the report only came out on late Friday afternoon, and Monday offices were closed at City Hall, so it made it even more difficult for them to get information for the community. And it was unbelievably short notice. We heard from Mr. Marks about why, because this is a settlement. We're no longer doing an application. The application went in and it went to the land tribunal. And this is to to move it forward. But I just wanted to ask you, what would you like me to ask the staff? Because of course you don't get to ask staff, but I can. What is your top concern? And I'm sure you're going to say the height and the precedent setting, but I'm guessing. But is there other parts of it that you're comfortable with, such as the setbacks and changes like for the parking, et cetera?
Thanks for the question. So I knew something was cooking on this site because a week ago today, they started demolition. So I knew something was cooking on this site prior to the staff report. So in my first submission concerning the major development application, my concern was also around the shadowing and public realm of Byron Linear Park. The shadowing that comes from this building basically put a third of that park into shade for the better part of the day. Certainly fall afternoon sun put it in the dark. And I think we need to fight for public realm space and the quality of that public realm space. Now the towers have wiggled around. There's one less of them. I think it's only fair to see what that sunlight study would look like. And also the parking situation is actually very interesting because Ferncroft will tell you that they are a wonderful, conscientious developer because they have included parking. As a transit-oriented development, they don't need to provide parking, but they're providing parking at 50%. They're providing bikes at 50%. We're concerned about that, but we also think that the parking regulations in the general area need to be tightened up. There's a lot of towers in the McCune Ambleside area, and there's a lot of on-street parking. I think the last thing we want is for the areas north of Richmond Road to then be parking on the south side in those residential areas, or even to the east side in Woodruff North areas. So we're concerned about the overall traffic and parking effects, the sunlight, and I think the city is selling its soul for less than 3% affordable units. When the policy says 10% and you're going for 3%, I think that's pretty lowballing.
Thank you, Ian. Believe me, I wish it was more. Absolutely, more affordable housing. I wasn't part of the negotiations directly, so that is something that we have to put into our policies, because right now we don't have a policy on it. It's written as a recommendation in our report on housing and homelessness, but it's not in a bylaw automatically. So that's part of the frustration, I know. I did get a chance to ask a representative of the developer about possibly involving the community in site plan, just to give them information and to be able to, see what's happening and perhaps have some suggestions. And I hate to put them on the spot, but if that would that be amenable to the community? I got a nod.
I would love to be engaged. I would love to be engaged in a face-to-face conversation with Ferncroft, whether that be within a broader community association meeting or with our development and infrastructure committee, which I'm now chair of. I got demoted.
Okay. And I should remind you, of course, there's other communities such as the condo buildings in the neighborhood too. So it's not going to change this.
Well, and Woodruff North.
Yes. But it just gives them an opportunity to get the information and make some suggestions on based on the application going through. Okay. Thank you.
Be great.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kavanaugh. Mr. McCallum, I don't see any further questions for you from committee members. Thank you very much for your presentation. Are there any further questions of staff from committee members? Councillor Kavanaugh.
Me, I put up my hand the other way. I realize this has been a lot of pressure for staff, and it's an opportunity to avoid going to the Ontario Land Tribunal, i.e. having the original application go through. But I just wanted to ask about getting information to the community, because given that it's all changed, it's a different application. We don't have information about shadowing and public realm, et cetera. And how quickly can we get that to the community?
Chair, we could post the plans to the DevApp site. That's not the usual way, or we could make them available to the councillor to put in a newsletter.
That I would like that very much. Again, this has been extremely hard on the communities, finding out on a Friday afternoon for something that's coming the following Wednesday when there's a Monday holiday. It's very unusual, and we all understand why, but we just have to emphasize that this is very difficult on the community, and so having information is very important to them. Thank you.
I don't see any further questions from committee members for staff. Is the recommendation carried? Carried. Michael, did you want to very briefly? Sorry, Mike, just out loud, quick comment. I think you wanted to thank legal staff on this one.
No, all I was going to say, Chair, is that I learned long ago as a baby lawyer that the best kind of settlement is when either both parties leave equally happy or both parties leave equally unhappy. I won't tell you which one this is, but I did want to, on behalf of our client, and I have the planners, Mr. Casagrande, Ms. Della Rosa in the gallery, just wanted to extend thanks to planning staff, to Mr. Mark, and frankly, to this committee in endorsing this settlement. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Baldwin. Yeah, the legal settlements are never entirely satisfactory, but I think, it behooves us to be pragmatic in an effort to preserve some of the real gains that our staff worked very hard to try to get, as opposed to rolling the dice on proceeding with the original rejection. So thank you very much to Mr. Mark, the legal team and planning staff for doing that, which leaves us into the last bit of the agenda. There are no in-camera items today. We do have one notice of motion, which I believe Councillor Troster is going to bring on behalf of Councillor Menard.
Thank you so much, Chair. Councillor Menard had to run to meet a resident. Whereas residents see value in affordable housing and traffic calming, and whereas these are two issues that are commonly subjects of discussion during development application consultations, and whereas discussions between Catassa Group and Councillor Menard's office have concluded in the form of voluntarily agreeing to contribute funds toward traffic calming and affordable housing in Ward 17, and therefore be it resolved that Planning and Housing recommend that City Council authorize the City of Ottawa to enter into a memorandum of understanding with Catassa Group for the purposes of realizing the following two voluntary contributions. One, $100,000 for the Ward 17 traffic calming budget, and two, $200,000 for affordable housing in Ward 17. The use of these funds is under the discretion of the General Manager of Community and Social Services in consultation with the Ward Councillor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Troster. We'll have a vigorous debate in 2 weeks. Were there any other notices of motion? I don't see any. Are there any inquiries? None. The other business we've already dealt with, therefore we are adjourned. Our next meeting will be on Wednesday, November 29th, 2023. Thank you very much, colleagues. Thank you very much, staff.